Hey, everybody. Welcome to what I've titled this week as What the Hell is Going On with Matt Lewis and Chris Cillizza.
Maybe that's the show's name. Maybe that's the new name.
What the hell is going on? I feel like that's like because I every week I'm kind of like, how do we make sense of all of this? Because there's behind the curtain, Matt and I do a little back and forth email beforehand being like, hey, what about this story or that? It's literally a 5-minute thing. It's not like that big, but there's always so many things. And I'm like, holy God, like how are we, like, how do we tackle all of this stuff? And I feel like that's how people feel, whether they're us or just consumers of us, which is like, what the hell is going on? All right. So in the what the hell is going on, by the way, Matt Lewis, great Substack, and you can find him at, is it Notice Perspectives?
Yeah, that's the name of our opinion column.
Yeah, but
section.
just notice.org. And you can find Matt. You can find Matt there as well. And we missed last week because I had a paid speech at Sea Island in Georgia, which, by the way, is gorgeous. Have you been there, Matt?
I was there about a month ago.
Oh, lovely. Did you fly into Jacksonville?
No, we went to, I'm trying to think of what we did. We went to Savannah.
Oh, yeah. Savannah's like an hour and 15 minutes away, and Jacksonville's an hour-ish. So I flew into Jacksonville, got driven there. Lovely. Lovely. Beautiful. I stayed at the Cloister, beautiful hotel, living the dream.
Yeah, me too. Right there on the golf course, man.
Lovely.
Lifestyles of the rich and famous, here, baby.
It's nice to do it for a day. So that's why we were last week, but we are generally working toward every Thursday at 10 a.m. All right. A lot of ways to go, but I think the way we have to go is we are, a day and a half removed from Abdul El-Sayed being called as the Democratic winner in the Senate race in Michigan. Much closer race than the polls thought it would be. All the polling had it as a double-digit win for him. He winds up winning by about 1. My contention is it doesn't really matter all that much how much he won by, but I want what was your, as you were either watching the results come in or I assume just watching our live stream all night, Matt, I assume that in Decision Desk HQ. What was your take on that result in general, and take that in whatever direction you'd like?
Yeah. But I think two things jump out. One is the amount of money that Haley Stevens spent. I think she outspent him 9-1.
Yeah.
And then to spend that much money and lose, whether it's by 1 point or 20 points, that's a lot of money to spend to lose. And then, I had interviewed Ron Fournier.
That was a great interview. I would strongly recommend that. Ron, longtime AP guy and a Michigan guy. Great interview. Go ahead.
Thank you. No, thank you. And we had a really good discussion. And he had sort of thought through all the different dynamics and basically making the argument that this race is the most important race in 2026 at this Democratic primary. And that there's so many, I think I counted 6 really big dynamics that were at play. And some of it's the usual establishment versus, insurgency thing. But, there's a religious aspect. There's a gender aspect. Look, identity politics, any way you want to slice it. Ethnicity, and then just really how Democrats view Israel was on ballot as well, I think. And so, is this a harbinger of things to come too? With the whole, I know that technically El-Sayed is not DSA.
That's right.
Maybe he's
DSA-adjacent. That's what I call it. Yeah, DSA-adjacent.
But there is a trend happening. And next week, we're going to probably see it continue in Wisconsin as well. Francesca Hong will likely win that gubernatorial race.
And as Paul Olson points out in the comments, I think Wisconsin gets a lot of attention. Francesca Hong, if you're unfamiliar, is a state rep who is a Democratic Socialist. Abdul El-Sayed has a lot of positions that are similar to Democratic Socialist, but does not identify as a Democratic Socialist. Paul Olson points out next Tuesday, the 11th, is Wisconsin and Minnesota, where we have another big Senate primary between Peggy Flanagan, again, who is not a Democratic Socialist, but definitely on the left, Lieutenant Governor, and Angie Craig, who represents the Twin Cities suburbs in Congress, who's definitely more tonally a moderate. So there's kind of another fight there. Yeah, I was intrigued. I don't know if you saw this morning. The New York Times wrote about the fact that Third Way, which is a very prominent kind of like centrist Democratic think tank. My old friend Matt Bennett is there. He used to work for the Clintons, is committed to spending $15 million on kind of an effort to combat the rise of democratic socialism within the party and warn the party about the dangers of democratic socialism going into 2028, right? Because
Mhm.
no matter what, Abdul El-Sayed is going to be the nominee for, like, we know he is going to be the nominee in a critically important Senate race in the Midwest, in a Midwestern swing state. I think Francesca Hong probably will win. I mean, she's way ahead, probably wins in a critically important Wisconsin governor's race. Um, I'm interested in the push-pull there. It seems like the lefty, either Democratic Socialist or Democratic Socialist adjacent wing is very much on the march. And I'm kind of wondering what the Chuck calls it the governing wing versus the kind of, activist wing, but they don't want to be called the establishment. So let's call them the governing wing. What does the governing wing do? And does it work? Because if this is like a Tea Party kind of movement, the lesson there was the governing wing of the Republican Party started to move too late, but I'm not
Mhm.
sure it would have changed all that much. It feels like all the stories now are DSA, 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 and the governing wing of the party seems to be like, because they need those people, but maybe they don't want those people in charge.
No, it'd be super interesting, right? Obviously, the Republican Party was hijacked, taken over
Yeah,
by Donald Trump, and but it started kind of with the Tea Party revolting against the
100%.
establishment, and we're seeing a similar thing happen right now in the Democratic Party. Um, Up until now, the Democratic Party has been more resistant to this. And I'm not sure if that's because they had leaders like Nancy Pelosi who were able to kind of instill discipline for a while, or if this is because they have superdelegates, which
Right.
ironically makes them
Built-in
less,
way.
yeah, it makes them less democratic
Yep.
than the Republican Party. But if you want to be able to kind of police your ranks and vet candidates, having these elites who are super delegates help do the candidate selection can accomplish that. So I don't know whether the Democratic Party, for whatever reason, either institutionally or because they had leaders, will be more resistant to this, or whether it's just a lagging indicator that they're this happened to the Republicans 15 years ago, and now it's just getting around to happening to the Democrats. I mean, obviously, the one thing the Democratic Socialists are missing is the one person, the Donald
Yep.
Trump, who would force it in,
Yep.
right? I mean, they've got Mamdani, they've got AOC, very charismatic, powerful figures, but not comparable to the power that
No.
Donald Trump has over the Republican Party.
And I wonder if the 2028 will sort that out. Right. I mean, Chuck and I have talked about this too. We talked about it this week. Abdul El-Sayed, if he wins, his goal is not, oh, if I accrue seniority, then I'll eventually be the chairman of the Ag Committee in the Senate. Do you know what I mean? Like, his goals are clearly national in scope. So if one thing I just put a pin in, and we're not going to talk too much about this, put a pin in this. If AOC does not run for president, that lefty Democratic Socialist lane is wide open. Ro Khanna will try to occupy that space, but I don't know that he's a big enough figure. So it's like, okay, well, then would a Senator Abdul El-Sayed try to occupy that space? Anyway, now he's got to get there.
Crazier things have happened.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's got to get there first. And one thing I am amazed by is I saw this quote yesterday and I wanted to ask you about it. So Hassan Piker, very controversial, I don't even content creator. I don't necessarily know what you call him on the left. He has
Dreamer.
said, yes, streamer. He has said things like America deserved 9/11, and he's made a number of comments that if they are not outright anti-Semitic, certainly walk the line of anti-Semitism very closely. He was asked about he had campaigned for Abdul El-Sayed before. Would he go back in? And he said, I would come anytime he asks me. And My response to that is Abdul El-Sayed should get as far away from Hassan Piker as quickly as possible. Like, it is insane to me that you would bring on this guy who, I mean, he said yesterday, like, everyone who voted for Haley Stevens is an Islamophobe. It's like, what? Like, I, I wonder about, I think Abdul El-Sayed is a talented candidate, but you will be judged by the people who hang around with you. Mike Rogers and Republicans, the Republican nominee, they are already running ads saying Abdul El-Sayed's friends think America deserved 9/11. Like, this is only going to get worse. What do you make of, like, Hassan Piker and then the broader, like, thing that we tell our kids, which is, there's a guilt by association, like your friend group, even if you didn't do anything, if your friend group does something stupid, you're going to get blamed for it. Like, how does he navigate that?
Um, or will he? Will he?
He was at a pool party with Hassan Piker the day before the election. That is a stupid idea. That shows a level of hubris that I'm wondering whether a much narrower than expected victory may have scared him straight on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it may wind up being a blessing in disguise. Like, if he had won by 20, Syed has some of that cockiness, cocksuredness. It might have reinforced that. Maybe this doesn't. Go ahead.
Well, let me go even broader, because I think this transcends the Michigan race. As important as that race is, right? The Senate could come down to that Michigan race. And El-Sayed may lose that race, which would be Democrats. They need the net 4 to take back the Senate.
Yep.
And if you lose a seat that is currently held by a Democrat, then you got to go win 5. So it becomes very difficult to imagine Democrats taking the Senate if they were to lose Michigan. And so this is a gamble that they're taking. I think, though, this is a national problem, a potential national problem for Democrats. And I'll tell you why, right? Like, I think that there is a populist appeal. And if you talk about things like Medicare for all or ending data centers, or taxing billionaires, like, I think that's broadly popular. But if you look at this DSA platform and the stuff that they're talking about, like defunding the Pentagon or whatever,
abolishing the Senate.
And look at Francesca Hahn, I guess in 2020 saying that we needed to cancel Thanksgiving or, because it's colonial oppressors or whatever. There's some radical stuff. And Hassan Piker, you've already mentioned some of the stuff he said. It's not going to be that hard to cobble together now a brand that will make the Democratic Party, by association, guilt by association, look collectively insane. I mean, it's some of it's mockable, some of it's scary, some of it's mockable. And I think, Chris, you could have a scenario where it's almost like, back in Germany, where it's like, well, the communists are coming. I guess we got to side with the fascists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
lesser of two evils.
Where you have people, and I think this would happen to so the normie voters, all sorts of voters who may be scared off by the Democratic Socialists and come running back to the Republican Party, even despite all the stuff Trump has done and despite Trump's approval ratings being so low. And I do think this is maybe more of a story for 2028 than it is for 2026.
I think that's right.
I think it deserves, Democrats need to be aware that they are entering a danger zone.
And that's why I'm interested. I'm going to have Matt Bennett of Third Way on next week. I'm going to do a Substack Live with him just to talk about what Third Way is trying to do, because it's one of the first sort of coordinated efforts to say, hey, look, before we run down this road, let's kind of consider what we're doing. Now, that doesn't mean you can stop it, but let's consider what we're doing. I don't know Hassan Piker at all. Never met him. But it seems to me like there is a fight going on for what democratic socialism means, because nobody knows what the hell it means. I mean, let's be honest, right? Like, what does it mean? So Trump wants it to mean like this is just plain old socialism, right?
Communism,
right?
Communism, yeah.
And then there's, weirdly, I think I would put AOC and El-Sayed in the other end of the spectrum, which is like, look, this is less about each individual policy, like, yes, abolish ICE is in there. Yes, Medicare for all is in there. Yes, the Green New Deal is in there. But it's really a tonal movement that is about like fighters, populists, outsiders, taking the power away from the powerful and giving it to the average person. And then there's in the middle of that, there's like the Hassan Piker wing, which is like, no, this is about Israel is evil. This is, do you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know where it falls because the AOC Abdul El Sayed version, I could see working. I mean, I think it worked for El Sayed in the primary in Michigan, right? The This is communism, obviously, I think is problematic. And I think the Hassan Piker version is pretty problematic. So it's like there's a fight for what it is. I mean, in the same way the Tea Party is like, okay, what is this? You know, like, okay, there's anger, there's resentment. Like, what does it channel into? And it channeled into Donald Trump, which I would argue is one of the more sort of malignant forms that it could have taken. But I do think that's out there. And I think you're right. I think it's much more we always say 2028. The 2028 election starts on November 4th, 2026, right? The day after the 2026 election, you will start to see this happen. But I do think that's interesting. And I do think Abdul El Sayed, it's like so much is weirdly riding on that race because if Abdul El Sayed wins, everyone will conclude, well, this whole electability canard about DSA candidates is bullshit. He won in a swing state. If he loses, it will be like, well, we can never elect, we can't nominate AOC. She'll lose. So it's like, well, I'm not sure it's true on either of those fronts. It seems like an exaggeration. It's probably how it will be read. By the way, I see some people in the comments saying, is Abdul El Sayed eligible to run for president? Yes, he was born in Michigan. He was born in Michigan and he's 41 or 42, so in the mid 80s. Anyway, even as that is happening,
unlike Jennifer Granholm, right, who can't
be president, and
not that anybody's clamoring of late, but
and Zoran Mamdani cannot be president, right? But and I would just note to people say, well, fill in the blank was born not outside the United States. That is not the point. You have to be born to it. Your parent has to be an American citizen. John McCain was born in the Panama Canal Zone, and while there was some debate of whether that made him eligible, ultimately, I think most people decided it was. So anyway, it doesn't matter because Abdul Sayed was born in Michigan, so not an issue. Let's talk about Republicans. I wrote this down off the top of my head. Now, today, weirdly, I have no idea. No one can tell me why this is, but today, weirdly, is the Tennessee primary. It is the only state in the country that votes on Thursdays in their primary. No one knows why it is. But anyway, it's the Tennessee primary. Andy Ogles is running in the 5th district. He is very scandal-laden and might lose. Then I wrote down 3 other House Republicans currently in trouble of their own creation. The most obvious is Max Miller, Ohio, his father-in-law is Bernie Moreno, his former father-in-law is Bernie Moreno, who is the senior senator from Ohio. Chuck Edwards resigned in North Carolina at 3:22 a.m. on Wednesday morning after the House Ethics Committee found him not guilty, but that he had behaved in just super weird and potentially sexually aggressive ways to former staff, like writing them poems. And then we have Corey Mills in Florida, who faces a series of sexual, I don't know if it's assault or harassment or misbehavior allegations. And both Anna Paulina Luna and Mike Herodopoulos, 2 sitting Republican members of Congress from Florida, have come out and said, we need to get somebody other than Corey Mills. The primary is August 18th. Now, none of those districts that I just went through, Matt, are like really vulnerable. The worst Trump did in any of those districts is he won by 9.5 points in Chuck Edwards' district. Miller's district, he won by 11. Corey Mills, 12.5, and Ogles, 23. But I do remember as things were going downhill for House Republicans in the teens, right at the end, we had Mark Foley and the House Page scandal. And it was kind of like the cherry on top of the disaster that was what was happening to Republicans.
And they branded it a culture of corruption.
Correct.
Which I don't think they've done yet. But
they haven't, but it's That's a lot. Now, it hasn't gotten other than Max Miller has become a national story because he's a moron and went on for a lot of reasons, but went on Jake Tapper. Someone advised him it would be a good idea to go do a long interview with Jake Tapper. It was not a good idea for Max Miller. But the others are kind of a little bit below the radar right now. Ogles, if he loses today, will be a story for a little while. But what do you make of that? Because that's 4 members. Look, if those 4 seats went, Republicans would be out of the majority. Like,
Yeah.
we don't. Bernie Moreno has called on Max Miller to resign. I believe Katie Boyd Britt in the Senate, Alabama senator, Republican has called him to resign. Mike Johnson has not. Donald Trump has not. Corey Mills continues to kind of skate on this stuff.
Didn't Trump say at one point it's just a family issue or something?
Family.
That's for them to decide.
I don't want to get in the middle of a family debate. I mean, I am convinced that if Max Miller was like embezzling money or something, Trump and Trump thought that he would lose, Trump would call on him to resign. The problem is Max Miller is accused of throwing boiling water on his ex-wife, Emily Moreno, Bernie Moreno's daughter, assaulting her, threatening her. She says he broke the collarbone of their shared, the daughter that they have together. They're now divorced. And I think Donald Trump,
that teddy bear story.
That's just the worst. That he
that one really resonates.
The bunny or whatever. Yeah. It just shows like the kid is being used as a pawn and the little girl is little. I mean, she's like 2 or 3 years old. I'm just convinced that Trump on Sunday said, well, these are just accusations. That's what he said in Air Force One. And I'm convinced that this is like everything else about Trump, right? Because that's what he's always said about the dozen plus women who have credibly accused him of behaving, of a wide variety of sexual misbehavior from harassment to assault. And if he says Max Miller needs to get out based on these accusations, what does that say about that? Like, I'm just convinced everything comes back to him. What do you make of that? Sorry, long run up to that.
That's it. It's all about Trump, as always. And these candidates know that, right? So like Max Miller, one of his talking points now is like, they tried to do this to Donald Trump and he was tough. He was resilient. He didn't back down. I'm not going to back down.
He said that to Tapper.
Yeah. And so Trump has basically created a permission structure. I think he's a magnet for bad people into the Republican Party, into politics. People who might have thought otherwise, in the past thought, well.
And by the way, Max Miller worked for Trump. I mean, we should say that too. He was a Trump guy and he was a Rubio guy. Then when Rubio he goes to Trump and he becomes known as the music man because he picked songs that Donald Trump liked on the campaign trail. He goes into the administration. He dates Stephanie Grisham, the White House press secretary. She alleges later that he physically abused her. So there's Trumpy ties there. Keep going. Sorry about
that. I think that Trump has been a magnet for people like this, and he has also given them permission to kind of let their freak flag fly. And so it is not surprising to me. There've always been bad people in politics, and things like there've always been scandals. I think it's probably worse than it otherwise would be because of who the standard bearer of the party is. And he's also now given and actually I thought that, for a while there, up in Maine, that
Plattner,
that Graham Plattner might hang on under the guise of like, well, Trump didn't give in, he fought it out. He made it through Access Hollywood and everything else. And so it teaches people the wrong lessons, I think.
Yeah. And that's, I always, we I think spend a fair amount of time, both of us, thinking about what's next. Because I am of the belief, and I know not everyone is, but that Donald Trump ultimately, even if he kind of continues to hint at it to try to stay relevant, ultimately this is his last term in office. He will leave in early 2029, which means, and he is also an 80-year-old man. So at some point in the next decade, it is very likely Donald Trump will pass from this earth. And it's like, okay, well, what comes next? And I think After one term, I could have been convinced that this is like, oh, this was all a bad dream and Republican Party kind of goes back to normal. But I now think that there are myriad ways in which he has affected not just political culture, but culture
Oh, yeah.
that won't go back to normal. And, we focus on the big ones of, the expansion of executive power or the kind of like some very important structural things. But I think this is a great example. It's like, I think there's a real question now of whether character is disqualifying or
Good characters.
bad character is disqualifying. That's what I should have said. Because I wasn't old enough to be covering this race, but Gary Hart got caught cheating on his wife, right? On a boat called Monkey Business with a
Monkey
woman named,
business.
named Donna Rice. It's like one of the most, if you care about politics, one of the most famous. I'm not sure that's that big a deal anymore. And the question I have is it, and I have this question with so many things with Trump, is it Trump specific or, which honestly would be the better of these two options? Like he's a unique figure in the culture. And when he goes that, or is it something fundamental has changed and that the Max Millers of the world can not only not resign, but maybe win?
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's both. I think he's both the product of the degradation of our culture and our values, perhaps beginning, I don't know, in the 1960s. And I think he is an accelerator of it. And then he
Yeah.
becomes, he becomes an example, a model. And look, he has been the dominant political figure in America for a dozen years now,
Yep. Yep.
and the standard bearer of the Republican Party for a dozen years now. So if you're under 20 something, you really don't know anything else
Nope.
other than him. And it would have been better in a sense, in terms of the cultural impact, if he just had two terms back to back. He would have been in and out in under a
That's right. It would
decade.
have been a decade. Right.
But
Right.
now it's he's just lingered here, and so just the impact is, it's not just going to go away. It is seeping deep, deep into
I
who
think
we
that's
are.
right. And the other thing, and I do make this point regularly, but it's true, is like politics is a copycat business. Like it just is. I mean, it's like TV. It's like, when Morning Joe suddenly became a success, everyone was like, here's what we got to do. We got to have like a show that doesn't feel like a show and knock down the fourth wall. It's like everybody copies everybody else. And wittingly or unwittingly, I think the way in which he has conducted himself and weathered things that absolutely would have in the past driven, people pointing out in the chat, like John Edwards destroyed his political career with Riel Hunter. Gary Hart destroyed his political career with Donna Rice. Donald Trump is in his second term as president of the United States. And the allegations against him are far more than he cheated on his wife. You know what I mean? Like and so in a copycat business, I think even Democrats, and again, consciously or unconsciously, Democrats who are who find themselves in a scandal may well be like, well, Donald Trump kind of just denied and made it
Yeah,
through. Why the hell? Why shouldn't I try that?
yeah.
It's hard for me to believe that won't change.
And think of the lesson. I mean, I don't want to sound puritanical here, but to the children watching too. I mean, it's not
Of
just
course.
politicians. It's like little Johnny got caught stealing or cheating on his test or whatever. Um, you know, again, I don't want to sound like, too naive or whatever, but there's something to it here about the lessons that we teach our kids. I will say this, Chris, and this goes back to earlier part of the conversation. On one hand, it feels like, man, we've got another like 2.5 years of Donald
Yep.
Trump or whatever
Yep.
till we get to January of 19. I'm sorry, not of 19, of 29.
29. Yeah.
But once we get past the like once these candidates start running in earnest, I feel like I'm going to feel a little bit happier. Like if and especially I was looking at the Drudge Report. Apparently, Trump behind closed doors
Yeah.
told some donors they have to get behind JD Vance.
Yes.
Like that makes me happy because it implies he actually is planning to leave. Trump is planning to leave. And, I feel like once there is an election a presidential election taking place, I'm going to feel like, yeah, Trump could still do a lot of damage until January, but I don't know. I'm going to feel a little bit better about like, well, maybe it'll be Rubio versus Ossoff. Like I can live with
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
Yeah, I can live with these two guys.
it is interesting. I did my Republican rank, top 10 Republicans will most likely to be the 2028 nominee on like Tuesday this week for Substack. And two things occurred to me. The first, which I didn't really write about, is man, coming up with 10 names ain't easy, to be honest. You know what I mean? It's like I could put Matt Lewis as number 10. Like that person has, you have as much chance as the person I did rank number 10, right? Because, and the second thing I thought of was, and I was looking at the poly market betting markets on this and polling and reading some coverage, is like, weirdly, Vance has had a good last 2 months. Like in the beginning of the summer, the betting markets had basically it narrowed all the way down where it was like Rubio and Vance had basically the same chance of being the nominee. They've since widened back out. And I think some of that is Trump too, which is like he is kind of behind closed doors saying things like, well, I really want it to be Vance and Rubio. I interviewed Maggie Haberman and John Swan for their book, which I will promote once more because I have it right here. Amazing. They've already sold a zillion of these, but if you haven't read this, you should. This is about the first 16 months of Trump's second term. Maggie said, which I thought was interesting, she's like, I actually think the Trump moving on from Vance thing is overblown, that it's still Vance until proven otherwise, which I was like, that's interesting. And I think this helps. This leaking of Trump saying we got to get behind Vance, and it all kind of feels of a piece. But I want to ask you this. As someone who, when we first knew each other, I would say Matt Lewis is a pretty conservative Republican. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think when I first met you, I was probably writing for townhall.com.
You were.
So,
yeah. So, I mean, well, I never like to categorize people.
Or maybe the Daily Call and then the Daily Caller after
people
that.
Say all the time, like, oh, Chris, you were a big liberal when you were at CNN. I'm like, I was the exact same person that I am now. I just worked for a different place. Anyway. Are you okay, given your arc of in politics and how that's changed? Are you okay with a President JD Vance or Republican nominee JD Vance? Like, is your belief that the abnormality is Trump? Like the real danger is Trump, not Trumpism, which hard to define, but JD will try to run on at some level. Like, I'm interested in that because I've wondered about that because, like, a lot of these sites that are built on anti-Trumpism, the Bulwark, the Contrarian, Acosta, Don Lemon, like, what do you do if, like, Trump does kind of shuffle off the stage or at least takes a lesser role after the midterms and certainly after the 2028 election? How do you feel about what comes next?
Well, look, I mean, there's an argument that other people after Trump, like a JD Vance or Marco Rubio, could be more dangerous than Trump because they've watched what he did.
Mm-hmm.
They've had a front row seat, but they're just going to be smarter and more competent than Trump. I get that. I appreciate that. I understand that. I disagree. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. But I am of the opinion that Donald Trump is a uniquely dangerous figure. First of all, he's the only person that I'm aware of who actually didn't go along with the peaceful transfer of power, and literally tried to stop the transfer. And I also think he is, whether it's the celebrity or just magic, has this charisma that nobody else is going to have. Like if JD Vance shows up and tries to pull the stuff that Trump has tried to pull, it ain't gonna work.
I think that's
not gonna work. So that's my like sort of the step by step how to restore liberal democracy. Step one, I think, has to be getting rid of Donald Trump.
And
getting him out of
agree.
Office.
I want to just add to that, which is I think he is, like, in a weird way, a one of one, in that he has been famous and had been famous for a very long time. I mean, I remember when my kids were little, this is early Trump. So, a decade ago, my kids were 7 and 3. watching, I think it was Home Alone 2. And he's, of course, in it
Yep.
as the rich guy. Kevin comes and says, like, "Did you see which way they went?" And he's like, "It's that way," or whatever. And he's just playing himself, which is
Yeah.
the role he's
Because
played
it's
this
in his
entire life.
hotel. It was
Yes, it's
filmed in
in
his
his
hotel, right?
hotel.
Yeah, the
And then
plaza, I
I was
think.
watching the Little Rascals movie remake, and he is the dad of the kind of rich kid who's building, like, his Pinewood Derby car is, like, super souped up because he's rich, and Donald Trump plays the kind of entitled dad there, and it's like, that image of him built through reality TV, built through, the Trump helicopter and the Trump jet, of like this aspirational wealth and kind of success. All there was a huge amount of iceberg under the water of him before he kind of popped up and actually ran for president. And like, it's hard for me to imagine, given the current field, right? Like maybe The Rock runs as a Republican or something, but given the current, JD Vance is not that. He's a politician. Marco Rubio is not that. He's a politician. Don Jr. is maybe the closest thing possible to it because he's actually like the eldest boy. Um, but like there aren't other.
Well, I mean,
Trump is
Tucker's an
uniquely.
interesting.
But I think Tucker is going to run for
Yeah.
president. I just think he's going to run. We should talk a little about Tucker.
Yeah.
So Tucker holds this thing yesterday on Twitter where he basically lays out a 10-point plan of what America should be. And it's, fair and equitable and all these things. And that comes on the heels of him hosting the kind of rump Trump, the Tom Masseys and Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world. And it makes me think he'll run for president, but not as a Republican, as a third party candidate. What do you make? You have a unique insight into Tucker, given your history with him. Do you expect Tucker Carlson to be on the presidential ballot in some way, shape, or form, or run for president in some way, shape, or form in 28?
I think so. And I saw that, was it Joe Kent who said that they're thinking about trying to find a way to get 50 independents on 50 states on different ballots, like for Senate or something. I have to go back and reread it. I would imagine Tucker would run as a Republican ultimately. Maybe I'm wrong, but that would be my guess. And I think he could be incredibly formidable on the debate stage. I would say, when you look at those 10, the 10 list, the list of 10 things, you mentioned, like fairness and things like that. It is interesting because, like, one of them is beauty. I don't know if you noticed this.
Yeah,
Beauty,
we've uglified our cities, basically.
And like, I think there's something to that. Now, I'm not sure that I want the president to be in charge of this, but
well, he already is, because that's what Donald Trump is focused on. But yes, go.
Well, I mean, there is like, within conservatism philosophy, at least, I think that there is just a belief that the sublime and the beautiful can inspire us, and that like things like architecture and design actually really do matter. And I think that there are certain people out there that he may appeal to that are not normally attracted to cutting the budget or tax cuts or whatever.
Yeah.
He's tapping into some of like maybe the Maha stuff a little bit.
Yes, he absolutely is. He's talking about that one of the 10 planks is very Maha adjacent.
Yeah. So I find it very interesting. And I'm telling you, man, I mean, he's not a celebrity in the way that Trump was, but I could just imagine, like, there's a scenario where he gets on the debate stage and just destroys the politicians up there.
What Tucker is, and this is why I keep him on my list, even on the top 10 list, even though this feels to me more like an independent bid. I think he is going to run for national office. I don't know what that looks like. Is it a Republican or Democrat? But what Trump has proven is that someone who is a savvy navigator of the attention economy can succeed massively. And Tucker is a very savvy navigator of the attention economy, right? I mean, this is a guy who is not on Fox News anymore, right? Does not really have that big platform. And yes, continues to get tons of attention and tons of clicks and tons of eyeballs. And that, in many ways, that is the metric, I think, by which we may measure success in 2028. I mean, to go back to Michigan for 1 second, you mentioned this. Haley Stevens and AIPAC. Haley Stevens really didn't raise a ton of money, but the super PACs around her did. And AIPAC spent $32 million on her and against Abdul al-Sayed. And I think they spent like 62 or 63 total million against in the race pro Stevens, anti al-Sayed. He spent like 7. He got outspent basically 9-1 on TV. And yet, like, number one, he won. And number two, on all the like TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, he was way beyond her in terms of followers, engagement, et cetera, et cetera. And I just wonder whether we're being 50, am I focused on how many gross ratings points is someone running, when it's like maybe TV, even for me, it's not like I never watch television anymore. Is by 28, are the people who have these massive social followings going to be able to dominate attention in a way as cable news recedes, right? I mean, broadcast news is basically dead. Cable news is dying. These platforms like this will grow. And Tucker is perfect.
Yeah.
He already's built a lot of architecture in these platforms, right? He is perfect for that. I just wonder whether we are judging success or the possibility of success by old metrics.
Definitely. And not only are people not really watching TV, but when you do see a TV ad, you're like, oh, this is propaganda.
Yes, right. Or is this AI? Is this right?
As opposed to like organically encountering a video on Twitter or X or what, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I just think they used to call it earned media, but that free media is in a way more valuable, more authentic, and I think more potent than the paid stuff.
I'm fascinated by it because it's like things are changing so rapidly. I mean, God, I read in Mike Allen's morning newsletter today that all the heads of the AI companies think that we've achieved a singularity, which is that machines are now able to self-improve. That these AI, they don't need you to type in, do this thing. That it's like feels like war games. And it's like, I just wonder whether politics, which is always lags business and tech, like it always, like whatever is happening in business and tech happens 3 to 5 years later in politics, like whether we're judging by the wrong criteria and whether, the attention economy stuff and where people consume and how they consume. I mean, this will be the dominant, if it's not already, that will be the dominant, way in which people consume information in 2027, 2028. And do you have a candidate who is, I mean, that's why I think AOC is underestimated, candidly, because she's massive social following. She does Instagram Live. I think we spend too much time on like, who has hired the key operative in Iowa? Like, that is how I learned about politics. Probably you too. Well, they've got a great staff. I don't know if that is as
Doesn't
important.
matter. I love that stuff though. I loved those days.
I did too. It was great. It was like, they just got this person or they got this donor or this. I think those days are over because everything, the other thing too is like, and I think you and I have talked about this. I still remember McCain in 2008 skipping the Iowa caucuses because he opposed ethanol subsidies. How often do you hear about what's Trump's position on ethanol subsidy? Do you know what I mean? Like everything has become nationalized and everything has become like vibes as opposed to like policy. It's very interesting.
And that's why I think we're probably underrating Tucker because we're looking at like, well, J.D. Vance is the vice president. Marco Rubio is the secretary of state. They come number 1 and 2. Then we get to Tucker, which by the way, I mean, even the fact that Tucker is listed number 3 still tells us a lot about
Don Jr., who is the same kind of thing. You know what I mean? He's a creation of the attention economy.
Maybe they should be higher, possibly. We might be underrating them, even though they're ranked 3rd and 4th, right?
I agree. It is. I mean, that's the Jonathan V. Last argument, which is like Trump is the harbinger of. He didn't, like many things, he didn't create this. You used the word accelerant, which I really like, that he's an accelerant of all of these things. And that we're just in a fundamental change, that it doesn't go back to the way it was. And it also moves in ways we haven't seen before. So the idea that like The Rock or Stephen A. Smith couldn't be president or Tucker couldn't be president is laughable because Donald Trump is the current president.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like, which I think is kind of, I don't know. It goes against is Trump a one of one or is he the leading edge of something? I mean, I don't totally know how to reconcile those two things. Anyway, anything else on your mind before we go? How do you feel about, well, I've got one sports question for you at the end, but you got anything else before we get there?
Well, I know where you're going with this, and I don't know if this is going to get published, Chris, but I have a piece that I'm working on right now that begins something like this. In the movie Moneyball, Billy Beane says, "How can you not be romantic about baseball?" To which I now say, "How could you be romantic
it's very
about baseball?"
hard.
Because
Both of
it's
our
about
teams.
yeah.
So for people who don't know, that the Orioles traded Adley Rutschman, who was their future first pick overall catcher, who I think had probably underwhelmed slightly if you look at the
in the last year and a half, but not
overall.
He came in 2023 when they won 101 games and won the AL East. He was performing as better than expected.
And the Nationals traded away their third best hitter, fourth best hitter, and best pitcher. In the, we are now in a Philadelphia 76ers like decade-long rebuild. So at the trade deadline, I kind of agree. It's hard. I'm going to write
I think
about.
You could argue in both cases, Chris. In both cases, I think you could make the argument that the team did the smart move for the long run. But what the hell am I rooting for? Am I rooting for the city of Baltimore? Am I rooting for orange and black jerseys? Or am I rooting for people? And Adley Rutschman was the face of the rebuild. This dream that we had, the dream that we had is like, we can compete. We're a small market team. We have to play in the same division with the Yankees and the Red Sox.
Yep.
The only way we can compete with them, even just for a few years, is to blow up our team, invest in a rebuild, and Adley Rutschman was the face of that. The dream, he was symbolic of the dream. And look, I'm from a team, we don't have a lot of great stars, but Cal Ripken Jr. was in Baltimore his whole career. Jim Palmer was in Baltimore his whole career. Brooks Robinson was in Baltimore his whole career. And I think there was a hope that like somehow maybe we can save Adley and Gunnar from the Yankees and the Red Sox. And so the fact that he's in friggin' Boston.
I know. I was going to say trading in. It's like when Bryce, and they didn't trade him, but it's like when Bryce signed with the Phillies. I was like, man, that is a real FU to Washington. Like you can't sign with anybody else.
Go out to Kansas City or something.
Exactly. The top three hitters for the Phillies are all former Nats: Schwarber, Trey Turner, and Harper. I one other thing on this. I'm going to write a piece about this. My 14-year-old has always been a pretty good baseball player and likes baseball. But this year with the Nats overperforming, he's gotten really into it. And he and I watch every game. I mean, one of the things I'll put this in the piece. One of the things I love about baseball is a thing that I think a lot of people hate about baseball, which is like, it's such a long season. They play every day. It's 162 games. I love that because there's kind of a daily rhythm to it. The Nats, for example, are playing 17 games in 17 days. There's a game every single day. Now they've lost 7 of 8, and he and I have gotten really into like rooting for Curtis Mead, who we traded, or rooting for Louis Garcia, who came back from almost being cut to hit 23 home runs. Both of them traded. Foster Griffin, who is a 30-year-old rookie who was in the All-Star game. And it's like, at some point, it's hard because now this season is lost. We were 2.5 games out of the wild card. They were now 5.5.
Same thing with the Orioles. The Orioles were only a couple games out of the wild card too.
And it's just very hard to win. And it's like, what? To your point of like, it was a smart baseball decision. I get it. I'm not in the Tony Kornheiser like, I can't believe these people. He's like outraged at this stuff. I get it, but I want to root for the Washington Nationals in 2026, not what we might be in 2030. Like at some point, you have to try to win. Like you guys are now, I think, probably in a position.
The future is now. said George Allen.
Yes, exactly. Like, aren't you guys are in kind of a position where it's like, okay, wait, are they rebuilding again? Because you had Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman and, all of this young core when
Jackson
they won
Holiday.
Jackson
Yeah.
Holiday, when they won 101 games, it was like, well,
Oh,
everybody
yeah.
on the team who's good is like 24 or under. But now it's like, well, are you rebuilding again? And how long is that going to take? It's like,
Literally, Chris, literally the lineup like yesterday featured one player from the 2023 run. Everybody else has either been traded or injured.
And 2023 was 3 years ago, man. It wasn't 10 years ago. The Nationals have not even been competitive between winning in 2019, winning the World Series, and this year. This year, they are competitive. I think they are now 3 games under 500, but they were competitive. Like, it was fun to watch them. This entire first 100 games has been fun. Like, they don't win every game, but there's some good stories, and they're clearly moving in the right direction. And this is kind of like it's a punch in the nuts, to be totally candid. Like, even though it's smart, yeah, I get the smart. They need arms. Foster Griffin's on a 1-year deal. Louis Garcia probably not going to ever be this good again. Dump him to the Yankees, get some pitching prospects. But like, as a fan, it's like, what's strategically smart, I don't root for a bunch of fancy statistical calculations on a piece of paper. It's like the pendulum is swung so in favor of the Moneyball analytics world that it's hard to root. I'm not rooting for the F war of somebody. I'm rooting for like, hey, Curtis Mead, he's Australian. He's doing better than I thought. Whatever.
I'm so with you, dude. I'm so with you. It's like
just
when I was, as an Orioles fan as a kid, like, there's always going to be players coming and going, but you want to have a run with like a core that these guys, and we don't just love them because they got a hit today. There are guys. No. There are guys. And I would rather lose with Cal Ripken than win with somebody else.
Yep.
Because he's our guy.
It's so funny. I grew up a Yankee fan, and like, I grew up in Connecticut, and I was a Yankee fan in the period they sucked, which is a very small period, but like, I loved and they started to get better towards the end, but I loved Paul O'Neill and Andy Pettitte in his early years. And it's like, they both were good, but they weren't like Derek Jeter. But there's something to be said.
Why did you trade Jay Buhner? Remember that? Wasn't that Costanza's dad?
To Seattle, yes. And like, yes, Amy makes a point. Don Mattingly and like Winfield, who was a little bit of a rental from San Diego, but still, it was like.
But he was there for a decade.
This exactly right. And like,
I mean, I may be wrong about a decade, but he was there. He had a run in New York.
And like, Willie Randolph was like, every day Willie Randolph was at second base. You know what I mean? Like, every day you had these guys that you rooted for, and now it feels totally mercenary. They're talking about trading. They're talking about trading C.J. Abrams, who's was the starting shortstop in the National League, who's like a left-handed power hitting shortstop. Going to trade him in the offseason. I mean, at some point, it's like, when are we going to try to start winning? Because that's kind of what I want to root for.
And
like,
also,
who are the guys that I can buy my kid a jersey?
Yep.
That in 2 years he's going to be able to wear, and the guys on the team. Right? You could buy a Cal Ripken jersey, and you're like, oh, Cal Ripken is always going to be there, right? Like,
I mean, there's something to like stick in, right? Like, we used to get married, stay married to the same person our whole lives, go to the same church your whole life, root for the same ball team your whole life. I mean, we used to have these permanent. There's a lot of things. This goes to Tucker Carlson, by the way.
It does.
This could be his number. This could be number 11 for him.
You know what?
Loyalty.
Do you have a Tucker impersonation?
Literally, I'll have to work on that. Really, it's very close to Rob Lowe, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a fine line between Rob Lowe.
Literally Rob Lowe on Parks and Recs. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is. James Bear makes a good point. He says every institution in our culture is now obsessed with expected value. That's a really interesting point, and I do think, look, the pendulum does swing. Seeing every baseball player or basketball player or football player as simply their expected value, and is their win over replacement high enough or low enough, misses the romantic part. And I'm not arguing that we shouldn't have statistics. I'm not Mike Wilbon, but it misses the romantic part of the game. Look, I cry every time at the end of Field of Dreams where Kevin Costner says, "Hey, Dad, want to have a catch?" Because there is something in our DNA. I don't know what it is, but whether you are sporty or not, about the sound of the glove and the ball and having a catch with your son or your daughter. I have two boys, so I say son. And we are losing that. We are losing the romanticism of it in a lot of institutions. I mean, there was a romanticism about politics that it's now very sterile, right? Like it's now, you don't see politicians who are different. Like everyone is cleaved into a.
This is why I got out of the political operative game, because the higher up I went, it became filling out spreadsheets, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if you're like a brilliant strategist, you could still be in the romantic business. But like I just gotten to the point where like I was like, it was all about metrics.
Yes. It's like, it's all measurables in everything now. Well, Matt Lewis and Chris Cillizza, the last two hopeless romantics. All right, we'll go. I got a thing at 11. Thank you all for joining us, as always, every Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern. And you can obviously watch the replay on YouTube on our Substacks. What the hell is going on? That's our working title. What the hell is going on with Matt Lewis and Chris Cillizza? Okay, everybody, take care. Be well. Thanks, my friend. Always good to see you. America 250.
Hey, Chris.
Yes. Love it. Bye, dude.